Welcome to Leadership Unlocked, an interview-style podcast where leaders share insights about their leadership journey and experiences. I'm your host, Craig Bulmer, a people and capability specialist whose purpose is to create opportunities to optimize people's performance. Well, welcome to this month's episode of Leadership Unlocked. Today, I have the good fortune of interviewing Larry Robertson. So welcome, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you. You guys actually, you and your virtual assistant, I think, reached out wanting to be on the podcast. I'm very picky about who I get on, so you feel lucky.
It must have been my lucky day or you were feeling kind, Craig.
Yeah, or both, who knows. But I reached out because I liked some of the stuff that I read and what you're doing. I saw your book at the airport last week, which is exciting for you. But your purpose has been to help current and aspiring leaders to lift their games and truly lead. So tell us a little bit about what you do. Succinctly tell us what you do.
Thank you. Well, I work with people from the age of roughly 18 to 80, I guess, but more likely in their sort of late 20s through to mid-50s. People who have to influence and inspire people. And I use those words deliberately because so often I work with people who are good informers. We deal in knowledge and we impart knowledge. But in my experience in my earlier career, which was the British Army and then working for an extraordinary advertising agency, I learned very quickly that information is not enough. That if we want people to do something, we need to not just inform them and expect it to be done. We need to actually influence them to understand why it needs to be done and then inspire them to do it. And that, to me, is leadership. And it starts with leading people's thinking, if you like. And then gets them to think about that, start to feel a bit about it, then go and do something. And I thought, well, how can I help people who are either in leadership positions or aspiring to be leadership positions to be better influencers and inspirers rather than just informers?
Yeah, I love it. I love it because I know I've worked with clients before and they said, we have this meeting every Friday and we tell people what's going on, but nothing changes. What am I doing wrong? I think you've just summed it up. They're informing, but not necessarily inspiring people. So, yeah, I love it. So you talked British Army. Let's not get too stuck in that. But it's an intriguing space. I know somebody else that was in that space as well. So how long were you in the British Army for?
I spent just over 6 years, including training.
Wow. And what sort of roles were you?
Well, I was very lucky. I mean, I became an officer, which was terrific, and my first posting was Hong Kong. In those days, Hong Kong was still a British colony. Exactly. Yes. So, and I've been back to Hong Kong many times since, and the former barracks I used to go to is now, of course, occupied by the PLA, and sort of the Union Jack flying is now a big red flag, which is interesting.
Yes.
So I was very fortunate to have that opportunity the first year as a young second lieutenant to be based in Hong Kong with the Irish Guards, which was the battalion or the regiment that I joined, which is one of the 5 foot guard regiments. And with the horse guards are the ones you tend to see around Buckingham Palace and that sort of thing, on duty, but not all the time. They also get out and do some serious work. So I would spend a year there, and that involved also some training in Malaysia, probably down to Singapore. And then it moved from there to Belize in Central America, which was also still on the Union Jack. And then we had a wee bit of skirmishing with the Guatemalans on the western border. It's quite a funny story. Can I tell you a funny story?
Sure.
So I was still a second lieutenant and commanding a small platoon, and my parents came out to have a bit of a holiday in Mexico, which was just north of Belize, and I agreed I'd meet them in Mexico City. We'd have a few days in there and then on the beach. So I got to what was called Belmopan Airport, which is Belize Airport, and there were 2 identical aeroplanes sitting there on the tarmac. And the check-in procedure was not what you'd recognise today. So I simply was given a bit of paper and there's the plane, so I went on the plane.
Oh, no.
And after about 15 minutes, I heard the captain say, well, welcome to, it was called TAN Airways, I remember that. Our flight time to Guatemala City will be 45 minutes. I thought, my God. And I'm a serving British Army officer. We're technically at war with Guatemala. So I summoned the host, there's a bit of a problem. I can't land at Guatemala. So, well, of course, we didn't turn the plane around. So they then had to ring ahead. And there was no British embassy. There was Americans came to the rescue, and American MPs, military police, escorted me off. I had to stay on the plane. Then they escorted me off the plane. They kept me under guard at the airport. But a good enough time for them to go and buy a postcard for me, which I wrote to my commanding officer saying, "Dear Colonel Giles, you look great from this side. Best wishes, Larry." And they posted the postcard. And then eventually they put me on a Pan-American plane coming up from South America, which took me directly to Mexico City. And by the time I got back from my holiday, the postcard had somehow landed. with my commanding officer. I don't think he ever thought I'd absconded, but he was quite amused.
That's hilarious. And scary all the time.
It was a wee bit scary. I think I've been in quite funny situations, odd situations, sometimes really scary situations. But I'm an eternal optimist.
Yeah, right.
I had a psych test done on me not long ago. Very high on risk, very high on optimism.
Interesting.
Surprisingly, not great on self-confidence, which is interesting.
Interesting.
And my wife said, well, that's probably what makes you quite good at what you do, because being Larry, it's called being Larry working with me. I think I push people quite hard, but there is always a recognition that this is a partnership.
Yeah.
I want to help people, but whatever he and she feels comfortable doing is what is far better than me just saying you must do this or must that. Going back to the telling point you were making.
Yes.
I have to be able to influence and inspire people myself.
Yeah, right.
To do things with me, not just because I think I'm cool and clever and all these or written a book.
So where did that thought come from? Because obviously you were an officer, so you had people you were leading. I'm guessing that in the army it's very much you will do as I do. I do as I tell you to do. At what point did this inspiring and influencing thought come for you or from you?
That's a great question, Craig. Thank you. I think it came very early on. I realised, there's a wee story in the book, which I might touch on quickly, but perhaps before that, it hit me that I'm wearing the Queen's Commission, or then the Queen, now King, of course. I'm wearing the commission that gives me the right to be an officer. People salute and call me yes sir, no sir, age 21, or whatever it was.
Yes.
But I recognised very quickly that while people will recognise and respect the rank, do they really recognise and respect the individual within the uniform, if you like?
Sure.
And I thought, well, why do people actually choose to work with or follow that individual? They will do as they're told, you're quite right, but do they really want to? In other words, do they really commit to it?
Yeah.
You and I will have done jobs in our lives, particularly when we were younger, where we had to work, earn the living, pay the bills, etc.
Yeah.
That's life. And we'll turn up perhaps at 9 and finish at 5, and okay, off we go. But is that because we just have to do it, or do we really want to do it? And to me, good leadership is about getting people understanding that people have choices as to whether they give their all or not. And I learned that very quickly in the army, that people, and you're asking people to put their lives on the line, which occasionally you are, and you're putting your own life on the line, that is not just having a good plan and telling people what to do. And you're right, people will do what they're told to a degree, they will. Yeah. But I'll give you very quickly in that book, I touch on a story where my very first exercise, it wasn't a real live firing situation, but an exercise in Hong Kong. And I was a bit nervous, but very excited, put my plan together, cut a long story short, it's all in there. And I asked my direct reports, you'd call them, the section commanders, presumably about 30 people, 3 sections and little headquarters. I asked the section commanders, 3 of them, all of whom had served longer than me, of course. They're about my age. But they'd all been in uniform for 3 or 4 more years than me, and probably far better soldiers. Anyway, I said, are we happy with that? There's silence. So we're all very clear what we're going to do. Yes. I was about to say, well, then get ready for that. When one Lance Corporal, the guy called, I call him Collins in there, but actually a guy called Croft, and he said, permission to speak, sir. And I said, of course, Corporal Croft, yes. He said, may I ask you a question, sir? I said, yes, of course, Corporal Croft. And he just wanted to check on a couple of things. I said, well, that's fine. He said, may I make a suggestion, sir? I said, of course. So off we went. And he basically rewrote half my plan, as I put it in the book. I thought about it. Well, this makes sense. And I said, well, I like the sound of that. What do we all think about that? Turning to the other 2 now. There was silence, but you could see the look on their faces. They were in agreement.
Yes, right.
Anyway, cut a long story short, we changed the plan, and off we went. And I never forget that the platoon sergeant, who was technically my number 2, if you like, but older than me, and he'd seen idiots like me come and go out of training college many times. He sat in the room, he didn't say a word. And after they'd left, he came up to me and said, well done, sir. Your first lesson in leadership passed. I've never forgotten that. And yet he had to call me sir. He had to salute. He had to do everything. If I wanted him to jump over, I think he would jump. But he would challenge me probably and say, are you right? Absolutely sure, sir.
Isn't it? I find that interesting because I don't want to make it too naff here around applying what was happening in the army to general, organisations and general businesses. But it's the same. There's people working in the building that we're here right now who are following the leaders and doing what they're told because they're in that rank. They own the business. They run the business and they own it. So we'll do as they're told. But how well are they listening? to their rank and file for use of words. It's interesting. I find it
Well, there's an old adage, the best ideas come from the front line, as you would be aware of.
Yes.
And I think, I learned that very quickly. We're a team, and I'm very big on teams. And obviously, a team needs a leader, yes. But ultimately, the team has to be able to perform without the leader. And in particular, in the military, of course, where the leader could get shot, for example.
Yeah.
And so, who takes over? So the team need to embrace and understand exactly what we're doing. What is the purpose of what we're doing here? What does the outcome look like? How are we going to get there?
Yeah.
And all the various things. And while the outcome doesn't change, the plan may need to change.
Yes. Yeah.
So giving people or empowering people, giving them, and the word nowadays is making them feel safe. That's the sort of word you've heard about. But I would say empowering people to speak up and say, "I had an idea, sir." Or, you wouldn't call people sir in this building here. You're right.
Sure.
But let's say it's Larry. Let's say, Larry, have you got a moment, Larry? I said, sure. He said, I've just had a thought about something. The way we do this and we do that every Monday at 9 o'clock? I've just had a thought, maybe there's a better way of doing it. And there always is a better way of doing things.
It's an interesting comment because, I'll pick up on little bits through this interview. Empowering people to speak. Empowering has been a bit of an overused word in corporate and business for such a long time. And I don't know that anybody really understood it. But I quite like that more specificness of it, of empowering people to speak. So I'm not empowering people necessarily to do your job, but I'm just going to give you the ability to be able to go, you can talk to me whenever you want to, and I'll listen to you. And you know what? We may even change because you are on the front line, and it might work. That's intriguing. I had one other comment as you were going there about the permission to speak. I thought I was in a Blackadder episode just for a moment there. Permission to speak. Yes, Baldrick?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier, before our interview started, I remember talking about Fawlty Towers, but certainly Blackadder is another one we're going to have a good laugh with.
Did you feel grateful that you just not discovered this, but it was highlighted to you early in your career?
I think so. I think I was fortunate in my upbringing. To be honest, I had what you would call today a fairly privileged upbringing, probably told from my accent.
Not from the north.
It was the north of Scotland, but people often say, really? But my parents spoke like this. I went to boarding school in England, university, etc. But I think the way I was brought up, my father was a bit of a war hero, a very tough guy, incredibly brave, very well decorated, but incredibly humble and a great sense of humour. Never took himself seriously. Despite all the things that he did, and they made a film about him at one point, the books about him, never took himself seriously. My mother was French, and she had a pretty good background and so forth, but everyone was the same to her. The postman got a kiss. Everyone got hugs and kisses. And I think I saw that, and I thought, well, he's right, this is about people, and none of us will succeed on our own, frankly. Whoever we are, we could be an artist. We're not going to succeed unless somebody that quite likes the painting, let's say, or wants to hang it in the gallery, and so forth. And so it goes with leaders. We can have a leadership position sitting in some smart corner office, big job title, a nice car parked in the car park. But if no one's listening, no one's following.
Yes.
And people don't have to listen. I mean, you're kindly listening to me. We've agreed to do that, but listening is actually quite hard. And there's all my other stuff going on in our heads right now. So I have to help you listen to me, just as you have to help me listen to you, and also your listeners of this podcast listen.
It's I believe, one of the greatest skills a leader or a person or a young adult or a youth can start to learn is to truly listen, to be fully present, to, if I'm not sure, to check in and understanding. And there's tools, we use tools like DISC to do stuff like this for some corporates. And they're very, very powerful because you start to create a great conversation. But to truly listen and go, hang on, where is this person truly coming from? We had a bit of a thing last night with my twins, and I thought they were against each other. What's going on? This is not what I've taught. And then at some point at night, during the night, one of them started to break down and she hadn't. And she said, there's kids at school saying X. And then we brought the other twin down, and the other twin had said, not knowing that this had been said, there's kids at school saying X. The X was, I'm the favourite twin. They were saying it to one person and saying the same thing to the other twin.
How fascinating.
And so they created a rift between the two of them.
Of course.
And it's like, whoa. You guys need to listen to each other, really understand where there's... So I'm trying to teach that how do you truly and utterly listen? So now you kind of mentioned the title of your book a little bit there. So let's give the book a plug, because I was pretty happy that I saw it in the airport last week.
Well, I'm happy you saw it in the airport.
So it's called, turn it around for me so I can, so it's called Why You Listen to, Work With and Follow the Three Qualities of True Leaders. So where did this come from? What made you write a book?
Well, thank you. And something that people, I'm sure someone said to you at one point, you must write a book. Right?
Yes.
And we've all been told this. And I thought, well, really, A, I'm quite busy, but B, there's so many books on sort of leadership and communication. I thought, really, yet another one. And people actually wanted to read my stuff. And then I did think about it a bit more. And I suppose COVID gave me the opportunity to not travel and therefore to be stationary for a while. And my eldest daughter actually encouraged me, when you get on with that book you've been talking about. And I'd already started playing with it. And I've always had this coming back to what I said earlier, I've always had this very strong philosophy about what I believe is true leadership, which comes back to what we talked about, that people will only follow you, and we'll come back, they'll listen to you and work with you and follow you if they trust you, number one.
Yes.
And we'll come back what that means. They'll come back, they trust you. They'll follow you and listen to you if they feel you respect, i.e. have an interest in them.
Yeah.
And they'll come with you and follow you if they feel that there is something in common, i.e. what you're trying to do and achieve as meaningful for them, and they can see how they can contribute and what benefit they're going to get from it. So the sort of mutuality. So the whole thing is around mutuality of trust, respect, and purpose.
Yeah, you mentioned those three terms, don't you? It's mutual trust, mutual respect,
yes,
and mutual purpose.
Correct. And that to me is teamwork, but it's also, if a leader, to get people to follow, has to basically establish that, if you like, environment of mutuality.
Yeah.
And that's really what this book is all about. And I've somewhat cheekily codified those mutual trust, respect, and purpose as my three Qs or quotients. AQ being authenticity, your authenticity quality or quotient. EQ being your empathy quality or quotient, and IQ being your intent quality or quotient, which is basically sort of the same way of saying trust, respect, and purpose. But I was trying to be tricksy and clever and have my three Qs.
You've got to do that. Everybody does.
Exactly.
That, right?
And I thought it'd be quite fun. And a little bit cheeky on Daniel Goleman's EQ, of course,
yes,
and the IQ, as we know about. But actually, I think it is that. And we've heard about being authentic. But I try and explain what do I mean by authentic. I try and explain what I mean by being empathetic. I try and explain what I mean by intentional. And break those down into various components.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one because, again, authenticity is a word that is bandied around quite a lot. And there are people in leadership roles that don't really care for people either. So talk to me about authenticity. What is authenticity in leadership?
It's a good question. I came up with this phrase, appropriate authenticity, a long time ago.
Ooh,
appropriate authenticity. Because in other words, there are different shades of you and me. And depending on what in this building right now, somebody comes in here with a bottle of champagne. It's a wee bit early, but somebody comes with a bottle of champagne.
Never too early for champagne. Let me just put that out there.
And they're going to get a slightly different, appropriately authentic Craig or Larry. A big grin, hey, where are the glasses, what are we celebrating? Somebody comes in here in tears, they're still going to get they're going to get an authentic Larry, but an appropriate authentic Larry. It's like, my God, what's happened? Can I come and sit down? And so there'll be that level of empathy, of course, will go out. But they're going to get, first thing they're going to get is an appropriately authentic Larry, not the roo, ha ha, Larry, aren't we chatting away here? So it's about reading the situation and recognizing that when I work with people, which you are you taking to that environment? Which you are taking to that meeting? Starts with mindset, attitude, of course. And then what is the expectation they have of you in that role as the leader? So which you're taking? Now, there's we all have core values, of course,
yes,
core principles, and there's certain characteristics that we have. But within those, there are blends of how we respond and do we respond appropriately. So in other words, came back to the point about we were talking about earlier about people empowering people. When somebody comes into your office, let's say, are they going to get the 100% Craig or Larry? Come and sit down. What's the matter? What's the problem?
Yeah.
Or are they going to get dismissed? I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, too busy now. Or carry on. Yes, do carry on. I'm working on my laptop, by the way, but do carry on.
Yeah, what was that you said? Yeah.
So they're not really getting me, and then I'm not really showing them any respect. Therefore, what they came to talk about, they're not going to bother with, although I didn't get it, so nothing's achieved. So you have to get it sorted out first. Build the foundation of trust, the authenticity piece, which comes down to basic character and competence, of course, and confidence and consistency around behavior and values and so forth. So we're getting a sense that this is Larry on his game. I've had people say to me, Larry, you look great, but you don't quite sound, you sound a bit down a bit. oh, thank you for telling me that. God, I realised I hadn't thought about that. And because my mind is distracted, so I'm not giving 100%. So I'm not appropriately in that circumstance. Fortunately, someone warned me and said, hang on, mate, you're down a bit.
Yeah.
So I then pick myself up, and when I walk in that door, they're going to get 100% Larry, as they expect.
I love the question, yet I'm challenged by the question. What's the you you're bringing into this meeting?
What's the you?
That's a very powerful
Which is the you you're turning up with every day? Like I say to people, when you walk out of that car in the car park, or you get off that train, and you walk across the road into your building, or into the factory or the farm, you are on. And
Yes.
whatever's been going on at home, I'm afraid, and if it's really bad, stay at home.
Sure.
Or if it's still bad, but go and see somebody and talk about it, and maybe whatever, they'll understand.
Yes.
But how many times has someone said to you, "Oh, Craig, how are you, mate? Oh, well, you're just about to say I'm all right, didn't sleep well last night," but they've already forgotten.
Yeah.
And
They're not really asking.
10 seconds later, they're expecting you to deliver 100%. The fact you didn't have any sleep last night, you've had a problem with something, your iPhone's not working, or some other problem is going on, or with the kids, you're not interested. So if it's really bad, I say to people, well, either just don't, I'd say you're working from home today, or declare it and say, look, mate, I'm fine, you're not going to get the best out of me today because I'm fine, I'm a bit distracted, or I've got to make a phone call to the hospital or something.
Yeah.
Because at least people, they know. Because otherwise, then we're going to let people down, because we're going to be so distracted with what's going on in our mind, in our head, or the irritation of what's going on, which is simply not there. From a competent point of view, people are going to pick it up, and therefore they're not going to listen to us because they can see we're not really on our game, which means they're not going to buy into us, which means we're not going to get anything done.
Well, I would imagine, so they're very difficult to inspire, very difficult to influence, because, you've got one part of the message being delivered that says he's not on today, and another part of the message, which is the words say, yes, I am on.
Yeah,
but there's a conflict, right? So,
but and we can just tell. I mean, you know people well. We can just tell very quickly. You're right, mate. You look a bit down. You sound a bit down, like that person did to me. And it's a question of which Larry are we expecting in this circumstance. When if we have a title called General Manager X or Team Leader Y or Project, we need to turn up and be on our game.
Yeah.
Because that's frankly what we're expected to do. And if we can't do that, we'd better be honest about it and saying, Frank, this isn't for me, mate. Somebody else can do it. Fine.
Wow. And that, so this is our AQ, is that what it was?
That's your AQ, your authenticity.
AQ.
Which you are you turning up with?
Yeah, I love that, because I think authenticity is so darn important as a character.
But also, can I just jump in? But it also requires, let's be humble too. Let's be open. Let's be honest. Of course. So let's say, well, actually, mate, I'm sorry, I haven't done the work. I'm sorry, I'm going to let you down today because, I didn't read that report. That's authenticity.
Yeah.
It's having the confidence,
right.
having the confidence to fail. It's having the confidence to say I'm stuffed up. You can't keep doing that.
Yes.
It's having the confidence that I'm not perfect, because none of us are perfect.
Yes.
And
yet we portray perfection, don't we?
Well, we do. We blokes particularly do. We're sort of trying to be armoured plated, but we know we're not actually, because inside's quite a soft individual. Even some of the toughest people I come across are quite soft inside, and we all have emotions. Just we blokes don't explain them very often. We don't talk about them very often, but we do have them. And so it's recognizing that I'm not perfect. I need to be humble. I need to be prepared to accept somebody else's point of view. I need to accept that maybe I haven't done the work, or I'm not absolutely on my game. But I'm here. I'm giving 100%, and I want people feel my exposure. They feel my interest. They feel my passion. They feel my belief that I'm here.
I read it. Oh, that's what it is. I was trying to remember what the book is. There's a book called The Ideal Team Player.
Right.
And I think it's by, yes, it is. It's by Patrick Lencioni.
Oh, yeah, I love him.
And
he's great.
He's great.
I met him, actually.
Wow.
Only once, but I met him. He was in Sydney 3 or 4 years ago.
I think he's coming out
next year,
isn't he?
Next year, yes.
Wonderful guy. But in this book, he talks about, he's got it here, wonderful. I'll sound like I know what I'm talking about. But it talks about a person being, an ideal team player is humble.
Yeah.
But they're hungry and they're smart. And they don't mean smart as intelligence necessarily.
No. And intuitive is what he means.
Intuitive, that's the emotional intelligent piece there. And I love that idea. And that ideal team player can be a leader in an organisation as well.
Well, I mean, the great leaders that I've come across, and perhaps you're the same, obviously they're smart and capable in their role.
Yes.
And they're able to articulate reasonably well. But there's a sense it's not about them.
Yeah.
It's about the team. It's about the project. It's about what we're trying to do. And their job is to not. I mean, I even say to people, when you want to say the pronoun I, and I'm not great at this. How do we substitute you?
Yeah.
Or we?
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so let's move on to the next cue. So
empathy question.
The empathy cue.
Yeah, and I was a bit worried about the word empathy because word empathy sounds a bit soft, and yet in the modern. And I was trying to write this, although obviously I'm of a different generation. Given I work with people as you do, who are of a more modern generation,
sure.
Our children's age, let's say.
Yes.
The word empathy is very much in everyday language today.
Yeah.
And I suppose I thought, well, that's a good way of explaining respect. In other words, if I respect somebody, I empathise with them to the point that I need to understand them, I need to relate to them. I may not necessarily agree with them, but I need to at least feel and get a sense of where they're coming from. And that means I need to listen better. I need to engage and connect with them and want to do that. And we touched on that earlier, I think. So the empathy piece is very much about the emotional connection, if you like. And because, as I said earlier, we all have feelings. And if we want someone to give more than just turning up for 9 to 5 or whatever their business hours are, we want them to feel good about what they're doing. We want them to feel committed to what they're doing. We want to enjoy doing what they're doing, to be part of something, a team or an organisation. Be proud of them being there. What's that barbecue conversation on a Sunday? What do you do for a crust mate? Oh, I'm a this or I'm a that. Or I work for whatever this organisation is called, I won't mention it. And what do they do, mate? Or what's all that about? Now, how he or she responds to that will dictate how they feel about it.
Yeah.
They're just in X. Oh, well, actually, it's a great organisation, it's a fantastic organisation. They really make a huge difference. We help the organisation do this, or we put people on the moon, but probably pretty close.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was just downstairs. For those, we're recording at my wife's business today because it's in between where you and I live.
Of course.
And I popped downstairs and I was talking to a couple of guys in the warehouse. And, Craig's been with this organisation for 18 years, I think, and I think he's only early 30s. And then there's another guy in there who's been here for about 12 or 13 as well. And I often go, wow, these guys are so committed to this business. They're committed to Janelle and Andrew. They're so committed to the cause. And I think, if they were at a barbecue, they're saying good things.
And that's because, they trust the business, it has the right values, does the right things, it's a decent business, obviously. They trust the leaders, including your wife, of course, and they know them well. Probably they're good engagers, connectors, those two leaders, your wife being included. And they feel valued, they feel respected, they feel engaged, and they feel that people will listen to them if they've got an issue.
Yeah.
Or they've got an idea, that they will speak up and people will listen.
She's going to feel very happy when she listens to this podcast. I think you're going to give it a wrap.
We should probably mention the company name. If you let me do it.
Oh, well, yeah. So my brother-in-law and my wife run Diner World. Family business, third generation business.
Excellent. Well done,
54 years or something. So they're going okay. They're doing all right.
And can I ask you now? That's a question from me now. What do they really do?
So they import welding equipment and consumables, and they distribute that around Australia. So her grandfather started the business when he was 47.
Wow.
Which is incredible. And so, third generation business.
And where do they distribute them to? What sort of organisation?
Bunnings is a major client of ours.
So you see, I'm going to be cheeky now. It comes back to, this will take us through the IQ. I asked you the question and you tell me what they did, but you didn't really give me a hint of why they did it. So
yes,
I'd probably be picking up and saying, well, actually, the reason this business is a good business, people I think love working here, is because you've heard of Bunnings, Larry, I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, what these people do, actually, they enable Bunnings' success.
Right. Nice.
They actually help Bunnings open up on 7 o'clock on a Monday morning.
Yes.
And that would intrigue me. So, what do you mean? And then you say, well, actually, you know what I mean by X, or behind the front door there's this.
Maybe that's why I don't work here.
Probably. But I've had that. I was working with a young lady at Westpac Bank many years ago when Gail Kelly was the CEO.
Oh, yes.
And I remember, so what do you actually do here? And she was telling me her job. And I said, well, yeah, but what do you really do here? And we went on. She wasn't quite getting it. And I said, well, supposing Gail Kelly walks in the door now, and she'll say, oh, hello, Larry, what are you doing? What are you doing with young Mary here? I said, well, Mary and I are working out how she's going to contribute to your purpose, which is to be the world's and your vision to do this. That's what we're working out.
Nice.
And then she Mary sort of, I get what you mean. I said, what's the difference you really make here?
Yeah, nice.
In other words, if you didn't turn up to work one day, Mary, would it make any difference at all? I've done that with people. I often do it with people who I think occasionally need a bit of kick in the pants. I'll be told about them, so I will draw a rough diagram of the business on the whiteboard. And then I'll say, I think this is you here, and then we'll agree that's the organisational chart.
Sure.
Then I'll pick up a cloth and I'll rub out, it could be 100 people, 200 people. I said, what would it matter if we take you along? I mean, I'm a shareholder here. Wouldn't that give me a bigger dividend? Does it make any difference to this business? They all get a bit nervous because maybe they think I know something they don't know.
Yes.
But more seriously, I said, what we're here to do is actually confirm what's the difference, why you are here and your 100 and 200 people are here. What's the real difference you make for the organisation, customers and so forth?
What an interesting mindset to come to work with, right?
Mm.
Like if you are a lot clearer about why you're coming to work. Well, I think your why can still be affiliated with the business's why, even if you don't own the business or you're just working in it.
Yes.
You can still...
Well, they're all joined together. They're all joined together. You do that because you trust the business. You believe in what it does.
Yes.
So there's a sort of the brand, if you like, which is the authenticity. So the three Qs work for a business as much for an individual.
Yeah.
So the authenticity of the business, Diner World in this case, the brand and what it does. The EQ of the business is its values and its behaviours and how it's seen and how it engages with its people and its customers and so forth. And the IQ is the difference it actually makes, how it delivers, and its commitment to that and so forth. And obviously the results it delivers for shareholders and the like.
It's interesting because I noticed as we were coming back into this room to record, you were taken by the values sitting up on the wall.
I was.
That grabbed your attention.
I always look for
away.
those. I always look for those. Yeah, just because, and again, we've all seen them sitting on walls or in the loo or somewhere.
Yes.
But what do they actually mean?
Yeah.
Is always the big challenge.
Absolutely.
We have lots of nice words around. But do people actually walk that talk? Do the leaders walk the talk? I've seen so many leaders, highly paid individuals, not do that. I mean, come into their buildings and watch them into the head offices and just ignore everybody.
Crazy.
Looking at their iPhone, sitting in the lift. I mean, the book is full of lovely stories about what I call lift stories about CEOs. Some who get it absolutely right, despite the pressure they're under. Others who are just so self-focused.
I think I've said this before on the podcast. I was in an organisation where the values were plastered all over the corridor walls. And only plastered. They were
yes.
foot-high letters. And no one could tell you what the values of the business were, yet they were in front of them all day, every day. Let's talk IQ. In this case, so
IQ very quickly is I touch is really what I call the intent or purpose.
Yeah, I like that.
Is what are we here to do, and what is success going to look like? So that's really all about understanding context. What's really going on in our world, both within our world and outside our world. So in this business here, what's for the customers, what's going on in the world, the products you make here, who else, the competitors and so forth. What does the future look like for those and the like? It's been very clear about why we do things and where we're going.
Yeah.
Clarity is very important. And I come across people where clarity is not there. And without clarity, we all get confused. And so we need clarity. So context and clarity are really critical. And then obviously some sort of ability, certainty to get us there and the commitment to get on and do it.
Nice.
That's ultimately what the intent's about.
So tell me, in your career, in your experience as a leader, so think back a couple of years ago, you're a leader. What were some things that you might have done, I guess a harsh word, regret? The things that you went, I wish I hadn't done this, or I wish I hadn't done that?
Yes, I think that's, again, a lovely thought. And I think we all look back on the day and think, could have done that a bit better. And it could be something as simple as a comment you made, or maybe it was an instruction, rather than actually engaging with somebody clearly and 100% and helping to understand what you're talking about and why. So I think, I can think of things where, again, I probably should have preempted situations. Sometimes, I mentioned I'm quite high on risk-taking. Sure. And that's fine. To a point, leaders have to take risks occasionally, but it shouldn't become a habit. And planning is really important.
Yeah.
I think we saw a situation just the other day with Optus, sadly. And actually, I know that the former CEO, and I feel sorry for Kelly, because I knew her, and I've done work with Optus. I did a lot of work with the Commonwealth Bank. One of the smartest people I'd ever met. But I suspect there was, we read, and we don't know, we read that there was not sufficient planning going on for these sorts of outbreaks and all these attacks or hybrid, or just whether it was a change of equipment, wasn't it, and technology. So you have a total wipeout of what it was. So they hadn't done what you might call scenario planning around, well, what if? And in the book I do mention, but we'll think, what is the worst thing that could put us out of business? Yeah. And that would have been pretty close, frankly. Yeah. So I suspect there was an issue there. That's ultimately her responsibility, or the board technically actually should have challenged. And there'll be people tasked to do that. But I have sat with clients in scenario planning situations, and it's fascinating. And you come up with all sorts of things as what might happen or might not. Could be competitive, could be environmental, could be even some sort of geopolitical situation. So I think that was one big error, I think, sadly. And I think we've all been guilty, and I have been guilty of perhaps not planning sufficiently, taking things for granted, rushing perhaps sometimes, and then thinking, hang on, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, and we made a mistake, or we lost money, or...
And you look back at that and go, oh, we could have circumvented that.
And it's I think sort of, what is it, less haste, more speed, or the other way around. And I sometimes you sort of sit down and plan, and because I'm a very outcomes-driven person, and because my career's in the army was all about outcomes. And while you have a plan, plans can change, as you know.
Yeah.
No plan survives the first shot is a well-known euphemism from a field marshal in the late 19th century, the German army. Talks a bit about that. I won't repeat what he actually said in German, but whatever it was about no plan survives the shot. In other words, it's like, you and I get up in the morning and the internet's off, as it was with me the other day.
Yes.
Well, life goes on.
Yes, yes, that's right.
I've still got to get on and do what I've got to do. And so again, that comes back to resilience and putting a smile on the face and giving people confidence that even when the internet's off, let's say, or some other situation has arisen, how do we give people a sense of confidence and belief in what we're doing?
Yeah.
And that's communication, of course. That's sadly where, again, so the second point where I think they failed was the communication out of Optus was bad, was wrong. I mean, she should have come out, sadly, straight away. But I suspect what happened, having seen it myself, working in large organizations, what I call CEO capture, and where well-meaning but ill-advised internal advisors, be they lawyers or corporate affairs people, will have said, no, we've got to get this all right first. And they'll be rallying the wagons around the campfire, and they'll be trying to sort out what's going on and trying to get the messaging right.
Yes.
And all this, you've seen it yourself. And so have I. And I have challenged people like that.
And people see through it anyway.
They see through it. We see it in politics all day.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have challenged, I'm proud to say, in some very big corporations in this country, in the top five, I can think of at least one of the banks, one of the other telcos, there was only one of the big one, and one of the very big mining companies, I have challenged, I'm proud to say, at that level, saying, no, this is too late for all this nonsense. The CEO or the chairman's got to get out and talk to the people, talk to the staff, talk to the customers, talk to the public.
Yeah.
And even if they can't explain what's going on, they've got to be there.
Yeah.
I talk about it, there's a little section on what I call crisis communication in this book. And I refer actually to a well-known story about 10 years ago, which was the BP disaster, I remember in Horizon, with the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, yes.
And the CEO was out sailing with his son. And he was called Hayward, I think. I mean, it was quite extraordinary how it went on. It was a textbook in what not to do.
What not to do, yeah.
And I would think that every CEO of any major business needs to read that case study. Because that's sadly nothing quite as bad, but what went on at Optus. And we've seen other companies have got it wrong recently too.
Two more questions for you. First is, I think let's touch for an aspiring leader. What would be your tips? Without using, the terminology from the book per se, just general, you're talking to a young guy, barbecue, lovely glass of champagne since we're on champagne, and you'd say to him, mate, here are 2 or 3 things my counsel to you would be. What would they be?
Start by getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, who are you? I spent a bit of time when I first came to this country, as I told you, I set up a little advertising business. And then sold it to my surprise, not for a fortune, but sold it. And we then had the famous recession we had to have.
Yes.
And jobs were not plentiful, and interest rates were pretty terrifying. And my wife, fortunately, was very good at what she was doing, so we went on the street. But I really sat down and said, well, what am I good for? I like living in this country. We'd moved here at that point, and so I'm happy to stay in Australia. But what am I good for? What do I offer? And I don't have a technical qualifications, fairly ordinary arts degree, and obviously military and advertising background. I reckon what was I good at, what was I not so good at? And I spent an exercise I describe in that book about what I went through to get to know myself a bit better.
Yeah.
What do I like, what do I not like, what am I good at, what am I not good at? And talk to people. So I think the first thing is getting to know yourself, what I describe as self-leadership. Just getting to understand what is it that makes you tick, what puts a smile on your face. Because you're never going to be a great leader if you're not going to be allowing those strengths and those traits and those beliefs to come forward. You'll end up just doing a job, and you'll be a good manager, that'll be it.
Yeah,
there's plenty of them around. So get to know yourself first. I think you then need to, having worked out maybe through that, what sort of industry, business type of things you want to do. Is it going to be consulting? Is it going to be manufacturing? Is it going to be resources? Is it going to be finance or whatever? So probably start thinking about what's the industry or the sector I want to get involved in, or I'm already involved in.
Yeah.
And then how do I apply myself there? What is it I can bring to that? I think that's for me is what the first thing we need to really work out. And then of course it's once you get involved or you start even going through the interview process. How do you make that person who's interviewing you feel special? Your CV may have got you in the job, may have got you in the door. Sorry.
Yes, that's right.
But that doesn't, the CV doesn't get you the job. It's the conversation, it's the interview that gets you the job.
It comes back to what you said earlier, right? What are you bringing to this organisation that can make a difference?
To a large degree, but also how you're making that person feel. So I'm being interviewed by you right now, let's say.
Yes.
And I'm giving you a headache probably, because I usually do. But it will pass, I promise, Craig. It's called being larried, as I said. But basically, you're thinking, if you were an employer, do I want to see this guy again, frankly?
Yeah.
Is he all about him, or is he actually interested in me? Is he the way talking, getting me the sense of what matters to him and how I feel he can fit in here, in terms of the culture and so on.
Yeah.
So there's a level of making people feel special when you engage with them, giving 100%, as I call it.
Mm-hmm.
So once you worked out sort of what you bring and you're comfortable with that, articulating that in a simple way, then work out who you're dealing with. Is it employer? Is it your first team? Is it your boss? Giving 100% so that he or she feels your interest, that level of what I call that EQ, as you like.
Yeah.
And then let's be clear about what we're talking about. Let's be clear about what it is you can offer, what it is you want to get done, the question you might have. What is the clarity around about what you are trying to say? What is your main point, if you like, or question that you want to put across? All of us, and I feel myself doing it right now, can become a bit what I call circumloquacious, i.e. talk around things.
Yes.
Get into the weeds.
Yes.
Talk a bit too much.
Yeah.
So it's keeping it simple as possible.
Yeah.
So first of all,
less is more, as they say.
Indeed. Know who you are, best you can. And we're all developing, but guess what makes you tick to a degree. Make people, whoever it is you're engaging with, once you've worked out the industry or the area you want to work in, feel special, that you're genuinely interested in them, because ultimately without people you ain't got a business or a team.
Yeah.
And thirdly, be very clear about what it is you're talking about. Maybe it's the point you're trying to make, maybe it's the objective you're trying to explain, or it's simply a question you're trying to ask.
Yeah.
Clarity around that.
Love it. I love it. And my last question to you is, what do you do for fun? What's Larry outside of the work and writing a book, and what does Larry do for fun?
So, again, well, I'm very fortunate, as I think explained. I have a small block of dirt west of Camden, southwest, about an hour from central Sydney, which my wife and I bought many years ago as a result of selling that business I mentioned. And in those days, it was uninhabitable. There was no running water or power, but it sort of spoke to me. These wonderful early buildings spoke to me from the early 1800s in a little hilly bit of country. And so over years, we eventually went to move there from Sydney, and we have sort of thrown ourselves at it. So we've created quite an interesting property that people love coming to visit. And that requires a bit of hard work. So what I love most is working with rock, working with wood.
Right.
Not creating anything particularly, but I've built some walls and other things. Getting on my tractor and probably causing havoc. But trying ultimately to look back at the day and say, actually things look a bit better this morning, or this afternoon than they did this morning. So I made a bit of a difference here, hopefully. And what's lovely about it is that when people leave, I know they leave with a bit of a smile on their face. That they've had whatever they've come for. My wife runs all these events, I told you, in the gardening and design world. So people hopefully feel they had an experience they enjoy.
Nice.
And as a leader,
so you're still inspiring them and influencing them.
Well, I'm going to say, as a leader, if you can have people leave you or leave your place of work at the end of the day, or simply leave a conversation or leave a meeting with a feeling, an experience that you enjoyed, or they enjoyed, and they want more of, then you're leading well.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming along and asking to be on the podcast. It's been worthwhile from my point of view. I will put the book title and so forth in the show notes. So why you listen to, work with, and follow you. It's cracking. It's a cracking book. I love the way that you've put it together. And I love this conversation. There's so many pieces of gold in it. So thank you so much for your time today. Amazing.
Well, thank you, Craig. One thing I often say is you can only give as good as you receive. And you've given me 100%. And given me with enthusiasm and as much as the opportunity, but enthusiasm, a sense of fun. I hope I've responded adequately. So
I can assure you I don't have a headache, so we're all good.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much again.